Hello and welcome back to Photoshop CS6 for web designers. In this video, we're going to start talking about the text tool, and we're going to start by creating our logo. So the text tool is found in the toolbar along with most of our other drawing tools, and it is the capital T here. So I'm going to click on that. If you don't see it available, then you can click and hold down until you see the horizontal type tool. That's the one we want to use. So we're going to click on that. And there are two ways that we can, or two different types of text fields that we can create right off the bat by default. One of them is a variable width text field, and that's one that changes its width depending on how much text you type into it. And then there's the fixed width text field, where you set the width of the text field and then your text wraps inside the text field. So the first one we're going to look at is the variable width text field. So I've got the text tool selected, and we've got some context sensitive options up here at the top. We can change the font, the size, and a few other options relating to the text here. Now for the logo of our file, we're going to use a font called Stint Ultra Condensed. And just in case you don't have that font, I've included it in the source files folder. So you can find it in there. It's zipped up. Just unzip it and install the font on your system. Just keep in mind that Photoshop won't automatically recognize the font. First, you need to shut down Photoshop and then restart it. Once you restart it and it reads through the fonts again, it'll find the font on your system and you'll be able to use it just fine. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind when you're creating a new text field is, first of all, take a look at the cursor itself. This is what the cursor should look like when you're inserting a normal text field. You should see an insertion cursor with a dotted square around it. Watch what happens now if I hover over our content background. You see our cursor changes. Now instead of having a dotted square around it, it has a dotted circle. Also, if we hover right over the edge of that content background, we see the insertion cursor, but then it has a wavy dotted line going through it. So each one of these is going to create a different type of text field, and you need to be aware of that before you actually click to create that text field. The shape that we're actually looking for is the cursor with the dotted square around it, but let me go ahead and explain what the others are doing. If we click whenever we have this cursor, this insertion cursor with the wavy dotted line going through it, then that's actually going to add the text to the path of our shape. So if we keep typing here, let me go ahead and just keep going till we get to the end. When it gets to the edge of the shape, it's going to curve and keep typing along that path. And so obviously we don't want to do that. I'm going to hit escape to undo all that typing. If we click inside the shape and then start typing, it's going to apply all of this text to the inside of the shape. And once it gets to the end of the line, it's just going to wrap around to the next line. And so it's going to treat it like a giant text field with whatever background we applied to it. Again, we don't want that. I'm going to hit escape. Now there's a couple of ways we can get around that. The reason we're getting this cursor is because that content background layer is currently selected. So when we hover over that layer, we're going to get that cursor whether we want it or not. However, if we hold onto the Shift key and then click, you'll notice that we actually get that cursor with a rectangle around it, which is the one we want. So we can now click and create a text field inside that content background that isn't affected the way it was before. So again, the Shift key will allow you to create a normal text field even if you're getting those strange insertion cursors. However, we don't want to put a text field inside that content background. I want to put it up here at the top, so we don't really have to worry about it. If you are worried about it, we can just click over here in an empty area of the layers panel to deselect that layer and then come up here and click. Now when we click, if you look over at your layers panel, it creates a new layer for that text field. And I'm going to go ahead and type in our logo text here, and it's going to be Freds, and then I'm going to hit return and photos. Once you type out your text, there's a couple of ways you can apply the changes you've made. If you just hit return again, it's just going to go to the next line. However, if you have a keyboard with a numpad on it, you can hit the enter key next to the numpad and it will apply the changes. Also, let's go back into that text field. The easiest way to do it, just to make sure that you're not doing anything you don't want to do, is you can just come up here to the toolbar at the top and click on the check mark, and that will apply the changes as well. Also, if we go back into the text field, we see our blinking cursor again. Another way we can get out of it is simply to just choose another tool. So if we choose the Move tool, for example, it will apply those changes, and then we can use the Move tool to move our text around on the stage. Now this isn't the text we want. This isn't the font we want, I should say. So I'm going to hit T to go back to the text tool. That's the keyboard shortcut for that, is just hit T. And then we don't want Trebuchet MS. I want that Stint font that we talked about. It's called Stint Ultra Condensed. So we'll click on that. It applies those changes. Now we just need to change the size. I want this to be about 36 points. And I want the color. Now remember, when you're dealing with text fields, the way you select your color is a little bit differently. You're not selecting your color from your color selectors down here. There's actually another color picker up on the properties bar. So if we click on that color picker, we can then select the color that we want. Now I already know what color I want to use, so I'm going to enter in the hex value for that color down here. And the value I want to use here is 6D-A1CE. And that gives us the blue color we're looking for, so I'll click on OK. And this is for our logo, but let me go ahead and zoom into 100%. I'm going to hit Command 1 or Control 1 on a PC to zoom in. And then I'm going to hold on to the space bar so we can get our hand cursor and click and drag down so we can pan around and see the entire top left portion of our image. Now in our text field, there's a little bit too much space between the two lines, and that's okay, we can fix that. There's a couple places we can fix that. We can click up here with the text tool still selected. We can click up here at the top on this option, and that will open our character panel. And you might not see it right away, but it's down here in the panel sets we have over here. Now, if you don't have them over here, it will open up whenever you click on the character panel button up here at the top, but you can also get to it by going to Window, Character. And that will allow you to change some values related to that text field. So you can change the font here, you can change the font size like we've already done, but you can also change here the line height. So we can set it to a value of, let's try 30, and that actually gets it a lot closer to where we want it to be. Now I want it to be a little bit more than that. So another way we can do it besides using the drop down is we can hover over this icon to the left and drag it to the left or right. So if we drag it to the right to about 32 points, that actually looks pretty good. So now I want to move this into place. So I'm going to click on the Move tool, the top of the toolbar, and drag it over to the left. And then I want to nudge it over about 20 pixels. So the way we can nudge it is with the Move tool selected, we could use the arrow keys to nudge it around. And if you hold on to the Shift key, you can nudge it 10 pixels at a time. So I'll just hit the right arrow twice while holding onto the Shift key, and that will move it over 20 pixels. Another thing I want to do is I want to center align the text. Right now the left side of the text is aligned, but the right side isn't quite aligned. So I want to center that so that it looks a little more even. So I'm going to hit T to go back to the text tool with that Fred's Photos layer still selected. And then up here at the top on the toolbar, I'm going to click to center align that text. And there we go. So once we center align it, we're going to have to move it again. So we'll go back to the Move tool. I'm going to hit Command H to turn on our guides. And then we'll move this over until it snaps to that left edge of that guide. And then we'll just hold on to Shift and nudge it using the right arrow key twice. So we've nudged it over 20 pixels. And there we go. So most of the rest of our text is going to be in Trebuchet MS. That's the font we're going to use for the rest of our text. So I'm going to go back to the text tool, hit T. And right now, if I were to change the font, it would change the font of Fred's Photos because we still have that layer selected. So an easier way to do this would be to go ahead and create the new text field and type in the text that you need. So I'm going to type Nature Photography, and I actually want this to be left aligned. So we're going to come up here and click to left align that text. And then we'll click on the checkbox to apply those changes. Go to the Move tool. We'll nudge this over, maybe nudge it down a little bit with the arrow keys. And then we can make the changes to the text format itself. So I'll hit T to go back to the text tool. With the Nature Photography layer selected in our layer panel, I'm going to change the font to Trebuchet MS. I'm going to change the font size to 19 point, and I'm going to change the font color. And we're going to use a value of A5, 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 and hit Enter. So that'll give us kind of a medium gray color. And then we can nudge that into place using the Move tool. And then I want basically a vertical line separating the logo and this little subtext here. So the line tool can be found underneath the rectangle tool. So we'll click and hold on to that until these other tools pop up. Then we'll click on the line tool. So then we'll select the fill color for the line tool. I'll click on the color picker here and we'll choose that same value, A5, A5, A5 for our line for the fill. And then we'll just click on our stage and drag down and hit V to switch to the Move tool so we can see what that looks like. Again, if we have the direct selection tool selected or one of our vector tools selected, then when we have that shape 1 layer selected, we're going to have this dark border around it and it's going to look thicker than the line actually is. But if we hit V to switch to the Move tool, then we can see what the line will actually look like, and we can nudge it into place using the arrow keys, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so the second type of text field I wanted to talk about is a fixed width text field that automatically wraps. It will automatically line wrap within the width that you set for it. So we're going to go back to the text tool, and in order to create a fixed width text field, we actually click and drag all the way across until we get it as wide as we want it to. So I'm going to snap it to the width of the stage. We'll actually end up changing this a little bit later when we start adding some padding to our stage. But for now, we'll just make it the entire width of that content background and release. And so now we can start typing in our text here. Now, one really cool new feature of Photoshop CS6, which saves a lot of time when you're doing web design, is we can now paste lorem ipsum text in here by going to the Type menu and click on Paste Lorem Ipsum. And now it pastes some dummy text in there that we can use however we want. Now it pastes more than we need. We don't need all of this text. In fact, if we expand this downwards, we can see that it has quite a bit of text in there. So I just want a couple of sentences. Let's grab all of this text from about here on down and delete it like so. And then we can resize our text field upwards. We'll just click that bottom center anchor point and drag it up. There we go. And we can hit Command Return on a Mac to apply those changes, or we could click on that checkbox up at the top. And there we go. That's how you create a fixed width text field. And no matter how much you type, it's just going to keep wrapping that text inside that fixed width that you created for it. So we'll do some more with this text field later. For now, I'll just leave it as is. Let's save our file. We'll go to File, Save As, and we'll save this as Fred's Photos 005.psd. So in the next video, we're going to talk about a very, very cool new feature of Photoshop CS6, and that deals with paragraph styles and character styles. So we'll talk about that in the next video. Thank you for watching.